Connor Wigman is transferring to Houston after a pretty disappointing season in 2024, and the Cougars look to rebound and hopefully make a bowl game this year in 2025 now that they have a solid quarterback. Taking a look at this schedule, got a home game against Colorado before their first bye week, which should be pretty tough. Other than that, a few games stick out. Road trip to Oregon State in the non-conference, as well as some Big 12 games that are tough with Texas Tech, Arizona State, and Baylor. 6 games at home, 6 on the road. And overall, the schedule's not too terrible, especially compared to some of these other Big 12 teams. This is only going to be a 4.5 out of 10.
Starting the season off with two non-conference games in the state of Texas. First is SF Austin, 100% chance here, nothing needs to be said. Then at Rice the following week. A little bit more interesting of a game considering how this Houston offense last year was really, really bad. Um, their quarterback last season only threw for just over 800 yards, and it's going to need a lot of revamping. And hopefully, Connor Wigman is able to elevate this offense to a level that is a lot more competitive that we've seen with Houston teams in the past. Not necessarily recently, but there were a couple seasons, a couple of years ago, where they were a much more dangerous team, a team that was a difficult team to face every week. But 90% chance here against Rice. Rice is not going to be as competitive a team as Houston is, at least not this early on in the season. Colorado, on the other hand, to start off Big 12 play is going to be a different story. Colorado, big story is they're losing both Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter to the NFL draft. Both are expected to be first round picks, or at least last I checked, they were both supposed to be first round picks. But they have recruited very well going into next season. They still have Deion Sanders there as their head coach, who has built an incredible program and incredible brand at Colorado these past 2 seasons. They were able to get a Liberty quarterback transfer in who is likely going to be the starting quarterback for next season and has a lot of upside, needs a little bit more development and experience at this high level, especially in the Big 12, but it should be an easy game for him against this Houston team that did struggle last season. So only a 40% chance here for Houston. It's a little bit because we don't know a lot about this Colorado team going into next season because they have to replace so many key pieces on offense and defense, and it is a home game for the Cougars. 40% chance for the Cougars once again going into that first early bye week.
And after that bye, heading on the road to face Oregon State. And the Beavers are bringing in Malik Murphy out of the transfer portal from Duke. The Blue Devils went 9-3 last season, and he looks to revamp this Oregon State offense. I think Oregon State's going to be a pretty solid team next year. Probably not going to compete for a playoff spot just because they won't have a strong enough strength of schedule. But that being said, I think they are a better team than Houston. Tack on the home field advantage. I think the Beavers have a pretty good chance in this one, only 35% for Houston. Then it's Texas Tech. And the Red Raiders are looking to be a pretty scary team in the Big 12 next season. Starting quarterback is returning, as well as a lot of production on the offensive side of the ball. Overall, I think they're one of the dark horses in the Big 12. They also completely revamped their football facilities, put a lot of money into the program recently, and I think 2025 is going to be one of the first years that we see that pay off. They're definitely a better team than Houston. Only a 25% chance for the Cougars, even though they are at home in this one. Then going on the road to face Oklahoma State, and the Cowboys were one of the most disappointing teams in college football last season, going only 4-8 after starting 4-0, I believe. So brutal season for Oklahoma State. Really not looking like they're going to get much better. They lost a lot of their older talent on the team, and they're going to be pretty young next season. Really not much to look forward to. I actually like Houston here a little bit. This is one of the Big 12 games that they'll have a chance in. There's a few, but this is one of the better ones, most likely for Houston to win, even though it's on the road at a 60% chance. Then it's Arizona. Noah Fafita's coming back for another season, but he lost his top target in Taterone McMillan, who is currently slated to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. They're going to need to find somebody to replace him at the wide receiver position. I think they'll be all right. But that being said, Arizona still struggled a lot last season after having very high expectations. This one is really a coin flip at this point. Arizona might have just a slight talent advantage, but that's probably going to be evened out by the Cougars' home field advantage, 50-50 as of right now. However, the road trip to face Arizona's rivals will be much more difficult as the Sun Devils are coming off of a college football playoff berth. Overall, very solid team. Sam Levitt returning at the quarterback position. Arizona State is going to be very scary in 2025. They'll have a chance to go back to the college football playoffs, but the Big 12 is a very competitive conference. There's a few teams up there who will be challenging them for that playoff berth. I think the Sun Devils, though, are much better than Houston. Only a 15% chance for a Cougars win in this game. Next up is West Virginia, who is probably not going to be as good this year as they were last year. Still pretty disappointing last season. I've seen some people say that they could go 8-4 potentially, and I really just don't see it. I think West Virginia is going to struggle next season. That being said, Houston's just a little bit more unproven, so we probably are going to favor West Virginia as of right now. That one's definitely one of the games that we're looking at potentially changing later on in the offseason. But for right now, 35% chance for a Cougars win. Then it's a road trip to UCF, who was also one of the worst teams in the Big 12 next season, projected to be about the same this season. Even though it's on the road, I actually think Houston has a pretty solid chance to pull off the win in this game. It's going to be on a Friday night as well. Might make it a little bit of a tougher environment since we know it's going to be a night game. But still, I think the Cougars and Connor Weigman are going to have a pretty good chance to pull off this win on the road at about a 60% chance.
Coming out of that second bye week, though, they have two really tough games to finish the season off. Starting off with hosting TCU. We think TCU next season has a lot of potential to really cause some chaos in the Big 12 standings. They were a very solid team last year. They went 9-4, 6-3 in conference. We think they're probably going to be right around there again, maybe bumping up to 7-2, possibly going 8-1 in conference if they really hit some strides and win some tough games. But a lot is riding on the back of their returning quarterback in Josh Hoover after a pretty underrated season. It's going to be a little bit tough though because they're losing basically their entire wide receiver room. But ironically, they do have a transfer coming in from Houston, who was their second leading wide receiver last year, with that being Joseph Manjack the fourth, 6'3", going to be a senior next season, going to be a huge weapon for Josh Hoover to utilize. And we just think overall TCU has a lot more potentials, a little bit more proven than this Houston team, even though Connor Wegman is transferring in and has just as much potential. Just the surrounding cast at Houston is not going to be as strong as what we think TCU has. But with it being at home for the Cougars, going to bump it up a little bit, still going to favor TCU with Houston only having a 40% chance here. Then to finish the season off, they are going on the road to face Baylor. Baylor, much like TCU, is another team that we are very high on. Also finished 6-3 in the conference last year, thinking they can make that same kind of run that we think TCU can. Their biggest thing is they have Sawyer Robertson returning as their starting quarterback after a very successful season, likely going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, and maybe even being a little bit of a dark horse to potentially win a Heisman. That's a little bit far out there, but it's a possibility with the stats that we've seen him from last season and what he's capable of doing next season. But overall, this Baylor team looks like they're going to be very solid, much like that TCU team. With it being on the road for Houston, with that talent gap, especially with Sawyer Robertson being the more proven quarterback, it seems like Baylor is just going to be the favorite in this one. But like Jonah was saying, this Big 12 conference is going to be very chaotic. So a 30% chance here for Houston. Maybe they're able to pull off an upset on the road to end the season, but 30% chance is where we feel like they'll be at for this game right now.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, I think we're probably going to see a 500 Houston team this year. A bowl game is definitely possible. I just there's a few games where I think they're going to really struggle. I really like Caden Salter at Colorado. I think he's going to fit in there pretty well. So even though that one's at home, that's going to be a tough win. Oregon State and Texas Tech don't really see them pulling off wins there. Same with Arizona State. So that's kind of four losses that I feel pretty confident in. And like Connor was just saying, we're pretty high on TCU and Baylor. So that would be the six right there. Maybe they can pull off an upset, but again, probably going to lose another game that maybe they shouldn't. That's not even mentioning, West Virginia, Arizona as some of those other close games. So maybe they miss a bowl game, but I feel pretty safe saying that they'll get to 6-6.
Yeah, I think they'll have a marginal improvement compared to last season when they went forward. They obviously fell short of expectations. It's not going to be a drastic improvement, but I think they're making the right steps forward, especially with bringing in a high potential transfer quarterback out of a very good program because Connor Wagman's transferring from Texas A&M. But like you said, schedule it's a little difficult. There's like you said, 6 games on here where we're pretty sure they're going to be the underdogs and probably not going to get the win. I like them a little bit more against Arizona because I've seen some stuff with Noah Fafita. I think he's a great quarterback, but statistically and just with some other like advanced metrics, if you want to call him that, he took a big step backwards from last season and was ultimately kind of a reason they didn't do as good as they could have. But that's just one game. West Virginia's losing a lot of people in the transfer portal right now, but maybe they get a couple key guys to come into the program. So I think 6-6 is possible, but it's going to be a stretch. I don't see them going anywhere really above 500 unless Connor Wakeman turns into an absolute stud of a quarterback at Houston.
Yeah, so last season the Cougars did go 4-8, but we think they're going to be better this year. Bringing in Wegman is a huge boost to the program. And I do think they can hit that 6-6 mark. The projected win totals actually just slightly under that, which kind of makes sense. Which it's at 5.8 wins. Definitely still possible though that they can get to that six. Vegas also likes Houston to end up making a bowl game, with the over 5.5 being favored at -170 odds. So definitely seems like there's a solid chance that we could see the Cougars back to a bowl game. I think for the first time since they were a group of five team. So that would be a big step in the right direction for this program, moving forward. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.